All right. So basically, we're talking about congruent polygons this entire unit. I mean, the unit's about triangles, but this today talks about congruent polygons, which a triangle is a polygon, so it falls under that umbrella. But they are the exact same. So everything is equal. The parts, like the side lengths are equal, the angles are equal. They're all the same. So what we're going to do here is we're going to match up the angles and match up the sides. And I also want to point out what this is. This is called a congruence statement. And so you'll see that a lot, this unit. And what this does is it matches up the angles for us and matches up the sides for us, where we don't even really need the picture if we have that congruence statement. But I also included the picture here. But what this does is, if you write angle D right here, it shows the angle D is going to be congruent to angle F. How do I know that? Because they're both written first within the congruence statement. So the order matters in the congruence statement. So angle D and F are the same, so we're going to put little arc marks there. And then angle J matches with, you can see the second letter here is angle C. So I'm going to put 2 arc marks here because they match. So they need to have the same number of arc marks. And then the last but not least, angle T is congruent to angle R. So I'll put 3 here just because 1 and 2 are already taken up and they match. And I use the congruent statement really more than the picture to tell which ones are congruent. And then for the sides, you can do the same thing. So DJ are the first 2 letters, so you can mark DJ. And then look at the first 2 letters from the second triangle, which is FC. And just one thing I want to point out, with the side lengths, like technically DJ is still congruent to CF, like if you invert the letters. So you kind of have to look at them 2 at a time. The first 2 letters are D and J. So in any order, DJ or JD is congruent to FC or CF. It's just, you're like looking at the side. So DJ is congruent to FC. Just these side lengths are the same. And then JT is congruent. So here I could either write CR or RC. Both of those would be correct. I'm going to write CR. But those match. I'm going to write 2 little arc marks. And then lastly, DT is congruent to FR. So you're just matching up the sides. 3 arc marks there, or they're not arc marks, 3 congruency marks there on each side, and they all match. All right, and so if you notice, this one's already marked, so it's almost like going backwards. Like, it's marked for you already. We just need the congruent statement, which is a lot easier to go backwards than it is to write all of these out. So write a congruent statement for the quadrilaterals below. So these quadrilaterals right here are, so this is a little different. Most of the time we'll be writing like it with triangles. So you see how these are triangles. This, it almost looks like a little parallelogram for a quadrilateral. You just draw that. A, B, C, D is congruent to quadrilateral. Okay, and then you just need to match. So A and E both have 1 arc mark. So E matches up with A. B matches up with F. C matches up with G. H matches up with D. And so ABCD matches up with EFCD. Each angle matches based on the picture and the arc marks. All right, and we're going to do the same thing for the next one. But I want us to do this. We're going to do triangle A, D, B is congruent to triangle. And then I'm going to pause because I want you to write in the other 3 letters. And this one is a little bit tricky. Okay, so you've got to look at the picture to determine which one matches. Okay, so this was silly. I put CD here, even though it should obviously have been GH. E, F, G, H. I put like the same letters. That doesn't make sense. So sorry for the confusion. Okay, for this one, ADB. So C and A do match up. Okay? But the tricky thing is D from this top triangle matches with B on the bottom triangle. So if you're having a hard time seeing it, look how D has 2 arc marks on the top and B has 2 arc marks on the bottom. So D and B should match up. So that is one congruent statement you could have written. if you didn't write these in this order, the thing that matters is that they match up with each other. So like it doesn't necessarily have to be A, then D, then B. I just had you guys do that so that it would be easier to see. But A has to match up with C, D with B, and B with D. That's what matters here. But that's a congruent statement. All right, and then now we're going to come down here and do some like actual math with numbers. So in this diagram, this is our congruent statement. So we know that we want to solve for y. We know that OM are the first and last letter and AC are the first and last letter. So those two sides of the triangle are congruent. So we're going to solve for y by saying 5y minus 13 equals 32. How did I know that? Because the congruent statement says they are congruent. That's how. Because they're not marked, but the congruent statement tells us that. So we're going to add 13 on both sides. And we got 45, and we've got 5y. So we're going to divide by 5 on both sides. So y is going to be 9. All right, we've now figured out what y is. Why did I figure that one out first? Because x and y are in the same equation, and I need to plug that in. So I'm going to take 9 right here and plug it in. And then I want to solve for x, but I have to figure out what angle B is equal to. So angle B is going to be equal to angle N. They're both the second letter. So they're the same. The problem is we don't know what angle N is. But one thing that you guys, you learned this in a previous math class. So this shouldn't be totally new to you. And we also talked about this a little bit on when we reviewed for our last test. All three angles of the triangle add up to that special number that we talk about all the time in this class, 180 degrees. So if all three of these add up to 180, we can figure out what angle N is just by subtracting, which I already did that last class. So 45 plus 46 is 91. So we add those together, we subtract from 180, so we get 89 for this angle. That means this is also 89, and that means that we can just set 2x plus 9 equal to 89. Even though we don't know what angle B is, we know that N is 89, so therefore we know that B is 89 as well because they're congruent. So we're going to subtract 9 on both sides, and then divide by 2, and x is 40. And then we can jump over to the next page. This is kind of out of the screen, so I'm going to back this up a little bit. All right, we have this congruent statement, and I'm actually going to rewrite it right here. JKLM N is congruent to UVWXY. So we know they're the same, and we need to figure out, all right, which of the following statements are true. It could be more than one, but it could just be one. So we're going to go through each one, cross it out if it's false, circled if it's true. So side KL, and it's based on this shape right here, but you don't even have to look at the shape. Look at the congruent statement. It's a lot easier. You won't get confused. KL is the second and third letter, and then it says it's congruent to UV. And we look and we're like, is that true? Well, KL is second and third, UV is first and second. They are not the same as each other. How do we know that? Because the letters are not in the same spot in the congruent statement. Okay, so we can automatically cross that out. Side WX is the, third and fourth. Side JN is the first and last. So WX and JN, that's not going to be congruent. All right, XY and JK. XY are the last two, JK are the first two. They're not the same. JN and UY. JN is the first and last, UY is the first and last. Yay. Which of the following statements are true? Only statement D is true. But basically you're going through and you're looking at this congruent statement, matching up the angles. If the sides are if they match, then you're good. Okay, let's look at this last one. The perimeter is 47. We don't know this side. It's also asking us to solve for XW. Oh, sorry, I can't read. VW. It's down here at the bottom. And one thing that we know is that VW and KL are the same. So I'm going to mark those as congruent. So we need to solve for x. Once we solve for x, we then have the length of VW and we'll be done. In order to do that, we need to add all the sides together. X plus 8 plus 12 plus 9 plus 13 equals 47. So all 5 of the sides add up to 47 because the perimeter is 47. And then we combine like terms. When we add them all together, we get 42. So x plus 42 equals 47. Subtract 42 on both sides. X equals 5, and I mean, that's pretty easy because if you know this equals 5, this one also equals 5. We know that from the congruence statement, so side VW is 5. Pretty simple. All right, let's move on to this last one. So today we're doing a Canvas assignment. You won't see problems like this, but tomorrow on our Delta assignment, the first section or two, go over these types of problems. So I just want to make sure you have some examples in your notes. Which point corresponds with point A? And what you're going to do is you're going to look at these, and these have like been rotated and then also transformed in a way with it's like been translated where it's well, I actually think this looks like it's been reflected, but maybe rotated and reflected, but it's basically been moved around. And we still need to match up the spots. So if we look at this, A actually matches with point I, and so we would just write I there, but A and I match. And then which side corresponds to BE? So BE, it appears as if, okay, here's that longest side, AE and IH, and then it's the side that comes off of that. So HK would be the one that aligns. And this kind of, takes a little bit of trial and error. For some of you guys, you can see it really easy. Others, it'll take a little bit on Delta tomorrow. And then which angle corresponds to angle D? So this angle right here is going to match with angle I right there. And then, sorry, not angle I. Hang on, pause. It's G. It should be G. Yeah. So you won't see that type of problem today, but you will tomorrow. So I just want to make sure you have that in your notes.